Video games are full of twists and turns, but sometimes they just do something in a series that shocks the fans. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, the 7 most shocking gaming fandom reveals. And just to quickly expand on exactly what we're doing here, we're talking about franchise games, like games where the twist may have ramifications outside of the game that it's actually in. Also, just a quick disclaimer, this video is going to be absolutely full of spoilers. All that out of the way, starting off at number 7 when you find out that Big Boss is still alive in Metal Gear Solid 4. Now, this is a big one. Throughout the first 2 games, there is a specter of Big Boss, particularly in the original Metal Gear Solid game, because there was a reference back to the old times when Snake actually defeated Big Boss. I mean, knowing that history, and a lot of people who played through the entire series, including the original Metal Gears, thinking that's when Big Boss died, and then actually being Big Boss in Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, when you find out in Metal Gear Solid 4, which is ostensibly a ways into the future, that he's not only still alive, but he's got something to say to Solid Snake. It's actually a pretty sad scene too, in all honesty. It wraps a lot of things up and frankly really endears you to Big Boss, who was, I mean, for all intents and purposes, a villain in the series at this point in time. Even though you did bond with him in Snake Eater, you knew that things went south, so having this gut punch that just basically makes him into a sympathetic character, it was a lot for fans of Metal Gear Solid. At number 6 is Bioshock Infinite, where there's a big twist about Elizabeth. Now, fans of the Bioshock series are obviously aware this is a series that likes to have big reveals that totally change the entire story and make everything much more grand and confusing. Elizabeth, in a lot of ways, basically causes all of the problems of the game, and possibly all of the problems in the Bioshock universe. She is Booker DeWitt's daughter, and pretty much everything that happens in the game centers around the fact that Comstock is also Booker DeWitt, which is in itself a pretty big twist, but when you get into the actual story, that's where things really start to get insane. It would probably be kind of difficult to explain it in depth, but generally speaking, what happens is that Comstock buys her from Booker DeWitt through an interdimensional rift. Booker DeWitt regrets it and sort of forces himself to remember it differently, and ultimately what happens causes problems for the fabric of time. Problems that actually echo through the entire universe of Bioshock into Rapture and affect the events of the original story. At number 5 is GLaDOS and Wheatley in Portal 2. Now, obviously the first game involves beating GLaDOS. You killed her, she's dead. However, that being said, you and Wheatley wake her up. Wheatley complains the whole time too. He really does not want to wake her up. He tries to talk you out of it, trying to sound brave for a while, and then he just levels with you and says, "Nah, be careful. I don't want to wake her up." This is quite a moment. Like, they really do some pretty good stuff with their characterization here. But it continues to get more insane as Wheatley ends up taking on the machinery that GLaDOS eventually occupies. Basically what happens is this long, continually more convoluted exchange between the two happens, and Shell and GLaDOS actually have to team up, which is the very last thing you would ever expect from the first game. Still, it really works well, like as a story and as a game. It's just, as far as I'm concerned, a really good piece of work. And number 4 is Knights of the Old Republic and Revan. Alright, so this is a massive twist. One, in that it has ramifications that go well beyond the initial game. I mean, it's Star Wars, so it's a huge franchise, but the Knights of the Old Republic and Old Republic games are all very much affected by Darth Revan. And you're him, or her. You're Darth Revan. You're that person. You don't have a memory at the start of the game, and you go through a gradual process of discovering who Darth Revan was and then figure out it's you. For one, Darth Revan had plots that were utilized in some ways by other characters. A lot of what happened in the very last Star Wars movie is not dissimilar to one of Revan's plans. It obviously didn't happen on Exegol, and there were elements of it that were different, but he was amassing the same type of Sith fleet and getting ready to go on a rampage. And that was you. It wasn't the Emperor. It wasn't some random that you needed to go and stop. It was you. You were doing that. And that is a good twist. Because the whole game, you're just like, I would totally stop somebody from doing that. That's not cool. Oh, right. It was me. At number 3 was the Mass Effect 2 intro. Now, what happens during the course of this intro is pretty significant. You really enjoyed Mass Effect 1. You played the hell out of the game, you got through the story, you got to know the characters, you got to know the events. It's a big deal. And then the very first thing that happens in the second game is the ship gets destroyed and Shepard dies. I mean, it's frigging insane. You're like, what? But this is the second game and it's the start of it. I mean, you end up pretty quickly resolving the situation, but still, it's like a gut punch and a surprise and a shock, and you don't really know what to trust. Like, did it really happen? And then there's a lot of people who theorize about the rest of 2 and the entirety of 3 actually happening, that the actual last canonical event in the story was the Normandy being destroyed and Shepard dying. There's actually speculation like that. Look into it. I certainly don't buy it myself, but such an iconic event is bound to create lots of discussion, and lots of discussion can often lead in interesting directions. I just remember my jaw completely dropping at the start of Mass Effect 2 because, I mean, it's a huge popular game. You never expect him to just kill the main character first thing. And then the way that you come back is also kind of a shock too. It's fun, it's interesting, it's intriguing. And at number 2, Reznov is actually dead in Call of Duty Black Ops. Now, the character of Reznov was first introduced in Call of Duty World at War. He's pretty memorable. He was played by Gary Oldman, who is a fantastic actor and tends to do things that end up being very memorable as he loses himself in his characters. And I mean, you could go on about Gary Oldman a while. He comes back again in Black Ops, helping the main guy, Mason, escape a Russian work camp in Vorkuta, and also helps you hunt down the bad guys of the game, repeating their names constantly: Dragovich, Kravchenko, and Steiner. The big twist is, though, however, that he actually did die escaping from the work camp. The dude you've been seeing ever since that is just a vision, and you'd been talking to yourself the entire time. Reznov actually brainwashed your character at that work camp, giving you the objective of killing the bad guys of that game. The reason Reznov wants them dead is because they used poison gas on Reznov's friend, the character you played as in World of War by the name of Dmitri. He later shows up in Black Ops 2, saving your guy in Afghanistan, but it's not even clear by that point whether it's the real him or an illusion. I mean, when you consider that Call of Duty is generally looked at as a pretty straightforward military shooter, there's actually a lot going on in the plot, and Reznov, I think, is one of the more interesting threads in that respect. And finally, at number 1, Assassin's Creed 3 has you play as a Templar for a while, and they hid that from public view for literally the entire development of the game. And it's not just that, it's that they actually had a couple of leaks which could have very easily given things away, and they managed to squash them before they caught on, which is borderline unheard of as it is. Now, the motivation behind having you play as a Templar was to actually humanize who is generally the villain in the Assassin's Creed games. It's essentially Assassins versus Templars pretty much all the time in the entire series, so the idea that you would take on control of one of them is perhaps one of the most unexpected events that could happen in an Assassin's Creed game. It's not Templars Creed, it's Assassin's Creed. And then adding to the fact is that you really don't spend a lot of time talking about being a Templar. They just kind of drop you into it. And I think that that's the coolest way they could possibly do it, because they don't like go, oh, hey, you're a Templar now. They just make you do everything. Like, he's really skilled. He's got basically all the assassin skills. You could be lulled into the idea that you're not a Templar, that you're just being some other assassin, but that's not the case. And that's all. What do you think? What was your favorite sort of fan surprise that just totally blew a franchise out of the water for you. Leave us a comment, let us know. If you like this video, click the button. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe, don't forget to click the notification bell, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter, Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on gameranx.